Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Raw in Wonderland. Today, I want to talk about something that we all experience at some point, whether in relationships, careers, or even something as simple as finishing a bad book. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. The idea that we stick with something just because we've already invested time, money, or energy into it, even when it no longer serves us. But before we dive deep into that, let me set the scene. It was an incredibly cold day. So cold that the word cold wasn't even enough to describe it. I had taken a week off for myself, a break from everything and everyone, just to reflect, think, and simply be with myself. And not just any break, I had intentionally traveled far away to the other side of the world with a time difference so big that even my biological rhythm would shift. Wrapped in layers and layers of winter clothes, I went out for a walk in the freezing air. At some point, I got tired and needed a break. Isn't this a perfect excuse for a coffee stop? So I stepped into a cozy little cafe, ordered my coffee, and stood by the counter waiting. And at that moment, something unexpected happened. A woman walked in, ordered her coffee, and stood right next to me. There was something familiar about her, but I couldn't place it at first. Then, as she turned to me and said, "Oh, hi!" It hit me. I knew this person, but not in a way that made sense for this moment. Back home, I went to a gym where I always used the same locker, and this person always used the locker next to mine. We had exchanged polite nods and brief hellos over the years, but we had never actually spoken. And yet, here we were, standing in the same cafe on the other side of the world. Now, what do you say to someone in this situation? It felt absurd. Normally, we never talked, but suddenly we were supposed to? I don't think so. And then my coffee was ready, and her coffee was ready. And at that moment, I said something that came straight from my soul without thinking. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I really need to be alone. Just because we ran into each other here doesn't mean we have to sit together, right? I saw the words leave my mouth before I could stop them. I cringed inside, but she thankfully smiled and said, "Of course, no problem," and left. I sat down, took a deep breath, and thought, what did I just do? I mean, I didn't even know her name, but I still felt guilty. Should I have just sat with her? What if she thought I was rude? But then I reminded myself this week was all about me. I had come all this way to be alone, to reflect, to rest. I didn't owe anyone my time just because of a coincidence. Fast forward, my trip ended and I flew back home. The moment I landed, I got sick, really sick. I caught the flu and spent days recovering. And during that time, my brain kept revisiting that moment in the cafe. Was I rude? Should I have handled it differently? But eventually, I let it go. Then, one day at my gym's cafe, I ran into her again, and this time only one table was free. Before I could say anything, she smiled and said, "Shall we sit?" And I thought, oh no, here we go again. But then I took a deep breath and told her the whole story, why I had gone on that trip, how I had promised myself solitude, and how I felt guilty afterward. She listened, and then she said something that changed everything. You know, at first I was a little taken aback when you said you wanted to sit alone. But then I realized, why did I feel that way? You didn't owe me anything. You were just putting yourself first, and you did it so naturally. It actually inspired me. And then she told me something even bigger. That moment made me think about my own life. I realized that I had spent so much time putting other people's need before mine. And after thinking about it for weeks, I made a huge decision. I decided to end my marriage. And I thought, oh my God, like Janice from Friends. I traveled across the world, refused to have coffee with someone, and somehow this small act had triggered an epiphany that led to a divorce. Of course, by the way, she reassured me that it wasn't about me. She had been unhappy for a long time, but seeing someone put herself first so effortlessly had been the final push she needed. This was a perfect example of the sunk cost fallacy in action. She had stayed in a situation that no longer served her, simply because she had already invested years into it. But finally, she realized just because you've spent a long time on something doesn't mean you have to keep going if it's no longer right. We all fall into this trap. We keep reading books we don't enjoy because we already started them. We stay in jobs we hate because we've been there for years. We hold on to friendships that drain us just because of history. But time spent is not a reason to keep doing something that makes unhappy. So, how do we break free? Here are two simple questions you can ask yourself. Have I done everything I can make this work? If the answer is yes, then maybe it's time to walk away. Am I staying because I actually want to or just because I feel I should? If it's just obligation, that's a sign. The sunk cost fallacy keeps us stuck, but recognizing it is the first step to free ourselves. And sometimes all it takes is a brutally honest moment like saying no to coffee to inspire change. So let's take a moment today to reflect. What are we holding on to just because we've already invested time, money, or energy? And is it really worth it? Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Bye, guys!